interested in developments in our country, and it shows the sense of connection and commitment that we feel for Guyana, even though we may be residing overseas and residing overseas for many years, and even though in some cases we may even be the children of Guyanese who were born in Guyana. The government of Guyana takes the opportunity when we have government officials traveling overseas for them to engage our diaspora communities in areas where we have Guyanese residents. And so this evening we have the pleasure of having the Honorable Gail Texeira with us. I'm sure for all of you it's a name that is already well known. She's had a very long and distinguished career as a politician in Guyana. She has served our country in a number of ministerial portfolios, including Minister of Youth, Culture and Sport, Minister of Health, Minister of Home Affairs, and she has served in Parliament for at least 2 decades. I don't know exactly how long. She is currently the government's chief whip, which is the chief organizer of government business in Parliament. And she is currently not a minister, but an advisor to the President on governance. So we have someone who is very actively involved, has been very deeply involved for a long time, and someone who is very knowledgeable about current developments in Guyana. So she is here in Washington to take part in some meetings of the Organization of American States regarding their anti-corruption mechanism of which Guyana is a part. And she has requested that while she is here in Washington to be able to meet with interested members of the diaspora to have discourse on Guyana. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you the Honorable Gail Texeira to make some remarks, and following her remarks you will have an opportunity to ask questions, to pose any questions to her if you'd like. So please join me in welcoming the Honorable Gail Texeira.
Well, thank you, Ambassador, and it's really heartening to see so many of you have come out on a Friday evening. I know that you've had all worked and are tired, and I know particularly for the women, Friday nights are nights you have to do lots of your own stuff for your home and your families. So I really appreciate you coming out to the embassy to be with me and for us to talk about what's going on in Guyana and what we can do to make things even better in our country. As you know, that Guyana has been making a number of strides in a number of areas, and I think that there's a lot of news that comes out of Guyana, and sometimes it's bad news. But there's also the good news, and so I hope that in my presentation tonight we can talk as Guyanese about what are some of the challenges we face, what are some of the successes we've had, and some of the areas where we still have to do an awful lot more work. And we are a developing country, as you know. We started out years ago being near the bottom of the pile of countries in the Western Hemisphere, near Haiti and Bolivia. And we have been making advances as a country. We've been able to cut poverty by half. And we hope with the new census that will be coming out at the end of this year, that we'll be able to see, to measure even more accurately what are the advances we've made. But as a country, I think that we started out being like the basket case of the Caribbean. Everyone felt that we were the poor relations that, and for those Guyanese who travel in the Caribbean region from time to time, were made to feel as if we were the poor relations of the CARICOM community, the Caribbean community. But today we can hold our heads with a certain level of pride in that Guyana now has achieved 7 years of economic growth. It is now, I think, the second country after Peru for having achieved 7 consecutive years of economic growth. And this year we anticipate also another 4% growth rate. So for those of you in the United States who know that the economy is having trouble in the United States, in Guyana right now the economy has been doing quite well. And so even when the Middle East situation, particularly with Syria, and that's all you're seeing on the news, on the CNN here. Since I've been here, I can't get anything else than Syria on CNN. But the issue of the first, of course, when the Obama made his announcement, the immediate reaction was, oh God, what's happening on the stock market and what will happen to some of our exports. And of course what we immediately noticed was that the oil price went up and the gold price also went up. So that we lose a little and we win a little bit. So that our gold prices have been, although there was a decline from March, the gold prices have gone up a bit more. And gold obviously has been holding its own and helping us to achieve economic growth rate, as well as rice. Our rice production is expected to be the largest this year since we've started producing rice. And of course sugar is a problematical area and has been for quite a while and will probably continue to be for quite a while. So that economically we're doing quite well as a country, and in terms of our CARICOM sister countries, we are doing very well. So economically we can say that from the point of view of economic growth rate, in terms of our financial status, we aren't doing too badly either. We have more foreign currency reserves than before in our history, and so these are some good things in terms of making sure that we have economic stability, that the country is moving forward, and that we have money to be able to do things for our people. We have been also able to improve the quality of life in Guyana. It's certainly not like how you live here, but then one has to determine what is the quality of life. For me, living in Guyana, I prefer fresh air. I don't like polluted air. But that may be not something you can measure, and so that's my choice. But you have a better standard of living, higher salaries, and stuff like that. So we're not in the same situation, but we have what we think are also a better way of life for us living there. But one of the big issues, one of the big investments that we have done in terms of making sure that the quality of our lives, quality of life of our people improve, is in the housing program, where we have been able to open areas in every region for housing, particularly for low-income houses. And one of the big advantages is that we've been able to give approximately about 90,000 households land at a reasonable price. So you can get a house lot between 80 and 50, 80 by 50 feet, square feet, for about 500,000 $500 US. And if you're in the middle income scheme, you can get for 107 by 107 feet for probably about $2.5 million Guyana dollars. So that, and I've forgotten how to convert that, that's about 10,000 US? Is that about that?
15,000.
Yeah. So that the programs, the housing programs have had a big impact on Guyana. When we started years ago, it was because housing hadn't been, there were no low-income houses built for a long time. And basically when we started, it was probably very naive to develop a housing program just for shelter. That was basically it. 15 years later, what it has turned out to be is really what I call the jewel in the crown for Guyana. And that is that we have seen the emergence of housing schemes and roads and electricity and water, new communities, and the emergence of what is now peri-urban centers in parts of the countryside where it was just villages. So, anybody here from West Coast Demerara? No? You have Tushan area, you have a huge scheme there. You have Parfait Harmony on West Bank, Demerara. Of course, East Bank Demerara. Anybody from East Bank Demerara? No? Where are you from? is where y'all from? Berbice, okay, I'll come to Berbice, yes. So you have the East Bank Demerara, you have the Diamond Scheme, you have Eccles Scheme. All along the East Coast, there are several schemes, including Nabacalus, Enmore, Strathaven, Collagen, etc. And then in Berbice, you have a scheme in New Amsterdam, and you have schemes further up the Berbice, and then schemes in Linden area. So there, and even in Lethem, you have housing schemes emerging and things like that. So we have developed, out of that whole program, one of the special things about it was trying to make sure that women who were single parents were able to get house lots. And so we now have data to show that about 25% of all people who now own house lots are single parents, women, which is an important area for us women in terms of having power, being empowered, that we have more responsibility and more ability to borrow because we now have collateral, whereas before many women did not have that. And so, as we say, when a number of the women get their house lot, their title, that they say that, you know, any man behave themselves is out the door because they're in control now. But so we have the housing schemes, and it has led to manufacturing of PVC for plumbing, zinc and so forth, and of course the bottom house industries are people making the concrete blocks and different things that are used for the manufacturing. So it's had a big impact on the economy and also the quality of life of our people. As a result of that, we started last year what was a remigrant scheme. For Guyanese who would like to remigrate, of course you'll pay a higher price than the rest of us Guyanese, but you will still get it at a good rate. It wouldn't be the same price you pay in the United States for a house lot, but you are going to pay more than us who live there. But these are housing schemes that there are several of them for remigrants. Some of those that are run by private developers, and those that are run by the government for remigrants. So if any of you are interested, but it's going like hotcakes, so you better watch out. And then we have a brand new scheme we've opened too under the housing program for young professionals. We found a number of the young professionals at home, the years, you know, the old thing of staying at home until you got married, that's kind of gone out of fashion in Guyana, so the young people want their own properties, their own, to live on their own. And so the young professional scheme that has started, that the house is built on a particular design by the housing program and the land, and you get it for about, it's about between 14 and 20 million Guyana dollars. So that's not a bad price for a young professional coming up. That program is, that scheme is almost completely sold out. So you've got a number of things going on in the housing programs. People having access to water, electricity, and so on. And then you have the health programs, education, etc. And we are challenged, we must admit, we are challenged too, like in other parts of the world, to do with education standards, trying to make sure our children are doing better in English and mathematics. And there has been improvement over the years, but it's still a constant investment and struggle to make sure our children are doing better in English and maths. In this last tranche of CXC, we have done actually better than some of the Caribbean countries who are much better endowed than we are. So that there is some progress in that as well. And of course in the health programs, we still have the primary health care programs, and children are vaccinated free. Unlike I think in the States, many children have to be vaccinated. In some cases, if you're not covered by medical insurance, I think you have to pay for that. And so I was listening on the news this morning here about the measles outbreak and the increase in measles cases, and I was interested when the health people on CNN were talking about the fact that children are not being vaccinated for measles and stuff like that. We are at the range of about almost 90% of all children in Guyana are vaccinated, free of charge, paid for by the government. You may know too that we have programs for HIV/AIDS patients, and so we have programs that are funded by the government to prevent mother-to-child transmission of HIV/AIDS. This is a program funded by the Global Fund for HIV/AIDS, and of course now that a number of the areas of funding for that are drying up, we are going to have to finance it ourselves, because what it has done, it has reduced transmission of our babies from their mothers with HIV/AIDS. We're down to about 1% transmission rate between mothers and babies, which is an important thing for us. We also have free antiretroviral treatment for HIV/AIDS patients. The challenges for Guyana, obviously, as a country, is the issue of transportation links and to be able to ensure that there's equitable access to goods and services of all people of Guyana, of all ethnic groups, of all geographic areas. And to provide many of the services in the interior are very expensive, but they have to be done. And so in the Amerindian areas, you have schools, primary schools and nursery schools in every Amerindian village now. We've moved from one high school in the interior with dormitories to now 13 high schools with dormitories, including places like Sand Creek and these areas, Paramakatoy and so on. So we have now reached a point where in the Amerindian areas, because in these communities, this is the first time that in the last 7 or 8 years that Amerindian children have had access to secondary education, other than what was before. You got a scholarship and you got to come to Georgetown or whatever. The problem we now face as a country is that in the high schools that we have built with dormitories, we're now bursting at the seams, because the Amerindian children recognize this as an opportunity, their families are grabbing it and they're right to do that. And so in Paramakatoy, where we built a high school around 2000, and we started with about 58 children, we now have 735 children, all of whom are living in the dormitories because they come from satellite villages. The same thing and so we're building a second high school at Cato with European help, and that will take off some of the load. So we have a problem now where we are being criticized. You will read in the newspapers that the dormitories for Amerindian children in the schools are overloaded. Yes, it's true. But we're not going to turn away the children. So we have to build more schools, and this costs more money because also you have to have teachers ready to teach. It's not just putting up a building. And so we now have a program to look at how to build probably about 10 more high schools in the interior areas to take off a load of probably about 3,000 to 4,000 more children. So these are challenges that we have in education. More teachers are being trained than years ago, and so we're having more trained teachers in the classrooms. These are a number of areas in the social area. We have programs, for example, where, as you know in Guyana, some of you may know, that there's a universal pension scheme, in the sense that for those of you who may have worked in Guyana and got a government pension or is eligible for government pension, outside of that in Guyana, once you reach the age of 65, you get a pension from the government. Now it's a small one because it's meant to supplement. It's not meant to be your only amount of funds you would have as a retiree. Public servants will get their public service pension, NIS pension, and then the government's universal pension. But people who've never had any kind of coverage, they would then be able to access that. And that has been increased to 12,500 Guyana dollars, which is not a lot of money for you, but it helps for many people who are poor at home. And that is approximately about 60 US approximately per month. And that is universal. So you have people who are lawyers and judges getting it, as well as people who are laborers. And that's an issue we have to address as a government. Should we have a distinction between the two or not? This is politically difficult. We also have programs for single-parent mothers and, well, women-headed households, I should say more accurately. And so they are able to go into training programs. They get a small stipend to help with daycare facilities, and they then can apply for microcredit loans under a program called WOW, Women of Worth, which is linked with a local bank to allow them to access microcredit. So these are some areas that we have been working to try to make sure that whilst the country is clearly going on a path that is capitalist, at the same time as we don't go so far that we forget ordinary people and poor people and people who are vulnerable in this kind of situation. However, we face a number of challenges. As a country, we have to be able to deal with the problem of energy, of power. And so we have, and those of you who are older will know probably for the last 40 years, that we've been talking about hydropower. And all of us who know in Guyana talk about the wonderful waterfalls we have and how they're not used and stuff like that. From 2008 to August this year, we had been negotiating to develop the Amila Falls hydropower, which would have provided enough power for us to link with the national grid and be able to have enough capacity for further investment, for further expansion. In Guyana today now, people are not living like they lived 30 years ago. So people want the fridges and the stoves and the ACs and the computers and the television, just like you. They want the same thing that you have. And they have a right to want that. But it does absorb a lot of energy. And so we have been in negotiations from 2008 with a number of companies, and we ended up in August this year reaching what was the culminating point for us in the negotiations with the investors, which were Site Global and Blackstone, as well as the IDB was involved, and the Chinese, and we were putting in the equity. So that, regrettably, having gone through these 5 years when we have been in negotiations with the opposition parties from 2012, 2013, in terms of all the developments with Amila Falls. Regrettably, on August the 7th, the Parliament met after a number of delays on dealing with this issue, and we finished at 3:30 in the morning, and the two areas that would have moved us to the next stage on the Amila Falls were defeated in the sense that only the government and in one case the AFC supported us, so that Site Global and Blackstone said that they would not move forward unless all three political parties supported it. This was an issue that was raised months before, and that's why all the discussions were going on. So that what was a dream that was almost going to be reality, because this was the last leg before the matter would go to the IDB Board of Directors, I believe, and also clear some of the other legal issues, so that by 2015, 2016, we would have had the hydropower built, and it would have started linking into the rest of Guyana. So we have to start all over again. For us, the hydropower, Amila Falls is not over. Amila Falls is there. It's not going anywhere. But we have to start all over again with negotiations to look for investors. And of course, there is damage done in terms of credibility, in terms of a number of whether companies will want to come to Guyana after negotiating and going through it for several years, and an investment that was quite heavy for the government in terms of trying to make this come about. So electricity is still one of the challenges that we face. We talk about solar, but solar is not economically feasible right now to do on a mass scale, except that we have started a program in 2011 where we're providing in every Amerindian house in the interior with a small solar system that can run about six lights, and has the capacity if in the future they want to hook up with a fridge or a television or something like that. So every single house will be providing that. About 10,000 households have received them, and it's being installed. It's an expensive program to move the solar panels into the interior areas, to get them in, to install them. So it is not a program that's working as fast as we'd like, but it is taking place and it is making a difference with those who have received it. The joke amongst Guyanese, of course, is that the Amerindian population has grown from 6% in '92 to over 10% now. Part of it has been the improvement in health and education in Guyana, and of course the rum shop joke is that now that their lives, the population might increase so fast. But the population is growing, and their health conditions have improved. So that we can do those kind of solar things on a small scale in terms of small units that are sent into interior areas. Wind power, there have been experiments with that, but that has not borne fruit in terms of the kind of investment that is required to do wind power. So we're still stuck with alternative energy, and the one being hydro being the most feasible and the one that we think that would work the best for us. You also know that we are exploring for oil and natural gas off the shores of Guyana. And having got the International Arbitral Award for our maritime boundaries with Suriname set, in which we got 97% of our claim and Suriname got the balance, we are now exploring for oil and gas. Nothing come up yet, but let's hope. They say it's down there, so we just have to try and find it. But that will make a big difference for us in terms of our earning power, our exports and so on, and also it will increase probably our importance politically in the region as well, both South America and the Caribbean. So the main challenge, because with hydropower we expected that the cost of electricity for the ordinary consumer, which is expensive at home, it is expensive, and that we would have been able to reduce that to what is now, we pay about 64 cents per kilowatt hour. It would have come down to about half of that, if less than half of that. The problem has been compounded by the fact that in the budget this year, the opposition cut the budget for GPL by over $5 billion. So we are already short $5 billion for what is the money we need to keep GPL going. So there has been an increase in some of the, what you call outages or blackouts that we are experiencing. The country itself, in terms of the country is changing. For those of you who come back, sometimes you see the changes that are positive, and then you notice that we still have problems of garbage collection. And so, I just came from South Africa and Johannesburg, and it's quite a clean city in comparison to Georgetown. So we were trying to think maybe we should invite the mayor of Johannesburg to come to Guyana and teach us how to, because somehow we cannot, we have really bad habits. And so the problem of garbage collection is a problem, and of course, as you know, that drainage and irrigation are constant battles we have, flooding and rainfall, etc. So that the maintenance of all the drainage and irrigation is a constant cost, constant battle, and something that we can't escape from, having gone through the 2005 flood. We cannot afford to not maintain these facilities, and they do cost a lot. So that there are changes going on and things that are good. And as I said, our economy is doing well. However, we face some challenges in the political realm. And that is where I'm sure that the discussion tonight will also surround that. In the November 28th, 2011 elections, the government the PPPC got the single largest block of votes. In the calculation of the seats, we have 25 seats which are geographic seats for the 10 region, and the 40 seats are for what's called national top-up. In each region of the 10 regions, there's a set number of geographic seats, that is members of parliament, and that's calculated. Now, in the elections, we got 48.9%. The opposition parties got their percentages. So then in the final workout, we got 32 seats in Parliament, the APNU got 26 seats, and the AFC 7 seats, which made it them having a 1-seat majority in the Parliament, although they're not a coalition between the two parties, they're two individual separate parties. In the last year and a half, it has been difficult in Parliament, very, very difficult to get a number of government projects through. Our budget was cut last year by $19 billion. This year was cut by $35 billion. So that in some cases, some of our programs and projects have been cut because we can't do them, including some major projects. The project for the expansion of the Chedijagan International Airport, which would have created a new airport, new runways, new buildings where the planes could come right up. What do you call those? Something bridge they call them or something?
Jet bridge.
Jet bridge and all that. and actually shifting the location of the airport a bit more over so we have more space. That project was killed in that we didn't get the allocation for that. And for the specialty hospital that the Indian government would be, we would be borrowing money from them, that project also was not approved. So that there are consequences for these projects being not approved by Parliament. This year, although approved last year, means that we paid contractors, we've gone into loan agreements, where now there's no more money to pay them, except they've already had contractual arrangements. So the specialty hospital, the Indian company that got the tender through the Indian tendering arrangement, has a problem now because we don't have the funds to pay them, but they have a contractual arrangement. So you have the CGIA project, the specialty hospital, and you have also Amila Falls. These are the three, what we call the flagship projects that we're trying to get through, because we believe that they will make a major impact on the, on the Guyanese economy, and provide jobs for Guyanese. In Parliament, it has, as I said, it's been a challenge in that a number of government bills have been defeated, including those relating to security matters. And we've had the defeat in the Amila Falls project issue. Just to let you know too that the President and Mr. Granger meet from time to time, the parties meet from time to time. There are exchanges of information on projects, on bills, on motions coming up in Parliament to try to see if we can reach agreement as far as possible. Not with great success so far. Let's hope that everybody wakes up and realizes that Guyana should be put first and so on, so we can get ahead, because every time a number of these projects take years to come to the point where you can move, you reach a stage where now you're clear and you can move forward. But when that gets reversed like Amila, we have to start all over again. And so the dream of hydropower, particularly in the case of Amila, having to go back and start all over again means we're going to have another 6 or 7 years delay. It just won't be done faster than that, because you can't go back to Site Global and Blackstone unless there are Guyanese overseas and other places who can write them and say, lobby them and say, we really see if you can put pressure on them from this end. So that the political situation is probably the one, in terms of Guyana's future and where we're going, it's probably the greatest challenge right now. Because I think that the economy, despite what has happened at the political level and in Parliament, the economy has been holding up. It's been holding up. But that shouldn't be taken as a given that that's going to be forever, because it is fragile. You have changes in world market prices, you have also looking at political stability, and if there's views that Guyana is politically unstable, it will have a great impact on the economic stability. So we are glad that we've been able to keep the economy quite stable, that we've been able to manage these things, but we do believe that we're facing certain challenges, and in my case, I say to you frankly, I think we're facing certain dangers as a country, and therefore we have to be careful to make sure that whatever gains we've made as a people, as a country, that we don't start reversing, because that means that every time you reverse something, it takes even longer to try to recreate and rebuild. One of the success stories, and this comes into where the political complications come in as well, you may have known a couple of years ago we started what was called the Low Carbon Development Strategy, and that Guyana trades carbon credits with Norway, and we have a memorandum of agreement with Norway in which we will be paid approximately $200 million over a 4 to 5 year period, based on us managing our forest well and not destroying it, not degrading it, and so on. Guyana is also part of the Red Plus group as well, in terms of avoiding deforestation and so forth. it has been difficult to get our money out to the Norwegians in this sense, and that is that. It's not that they're betraying us or they're not being good, but because of a lot of the reports that come out of Guyana that's negative, saying, you know, that all of us are thieves, we're a bunch of corrupt, you know what happened is that in the agreement within Norway, we have agreed to a range of oversights with the UNDP, with the IDB, and so on, to make sure that we are being absolutely transparent, we're being accountable, and so no one can say that we're doing something wrong with the money. Part of the money has to go for the Amerindian communities in terms of economic transformative projects, so they'd be more linked into the mainstream of Guyana instead of being isolated out there. And also programs to do with, additional programs to do with energy and so forth. There are also programs in which, with the Norwegian, the money we receive from Norway, which we take as revenue. It's as if we're selling rice, we're selling bauxite, we're selling the clean air, in a sense, to put it kind of crudely. And that is that to use some of that money towards the Amila Falls as equity. As a result of what's happened now, we have to go back and renegotiate with the Norwegians on a number of issues. And these are some challenges also. But we are proud of the fact that as Guyana, that we have gone internationally on the climate change issue, that we have put a model forward that is in terms of carbon credits, or trading carbon credits on the world market. We feel that this has been good for us, and it's a learning experience. It's a brand new experience not only for us, but for many countries in the world. And in terms of the oversight that has to go on to make sure that we're keeping to the agreements and the measurements to make sure we're not degrading our forests and stuff like that. So that, again, every time there is a report coming out about Parliament and defeating government here and defeating government there, it immediately has a ripple in the other circles, investors and so on. One of the largest, the country with probably one of the largest number of companies in Guyana are the Canadians, and they're mainly in the mining sector, gold and also natural oil and natural gas. So they have a direct interest in what's going on, and we have to make sure that we try to keep those companies working with us. Of course, the Chinese have a number of investments in Guyana as well, which, by the way, there are a number of studies done by both the United States and the United Kingdom about, based on their concerns about, in the Caribbean, the level of investment by China in the entire Caribbean. Huge investments in the Caribbean. So that, of course, these are new times with new emerging markets and new changes in the power balances in some cases, and so obviously at a political level those are sometimes concerns that are raised. Last point I wanted to raise before I open the floor, and that is that one of the things that we are doing now is what's called one laptop per family. I don't know if you've heard about it. We are not connected, the country is not connected in terms of, and so one of the things we're trying to do is to liberalize and modernize the telecommunications sector. GT&T have had a monopoly for an awful long time. Digicel is a competitor, but it has to get its links and through GT&T. And so that limits the scope and what they can offer. We want to liberalize and open up the whole telecom sector. Whoever wants to come and invest, they're welcome. But we have to change the agreements with GT&T. These agreements were made when GT&T was bought by ATN. And so, in the meantime, whilst we're trying to sort that out, we've also bringing in fiber optic cables from Brazil, and GT&T has brought in fiber optic cables from Suriname, and we're bringing additional cables as a government into Guyana in order to connect the country, because we feel as a small country with small population and the cost of movement and so on, that why shouldn't someone in an Amerindian area be able to sit on a computer and request a passport, or to check on their NIS, or to get any of the services, because there's always going to be the challenge of movement and transportation costs in Guyana. Even though there are more airplanes now and more domestic airplanes now, and we have a better ferries moving, and more ferries that will be used to transport people and vehicles in Guyana, it's still going to be a challenge. And so connectivity for us has to do with equitable access to goods and services. And the whole project of what we have is e-governance, so that people eventually will be able to link in and to be able to access services or access information and to know where to go to and what to do. To help that along, because those are major projects, some of which are funded, some of which are not, and they're funded by government, along with that is what is called One Laptop for Family, and that is that it began as a project that low-income families could apply, and there's a verification in the community. The community goes around and checks that someone's not saying that they want it and they have 3 cars and a big house and stuff like that. And so 32,000 persons or homes have received, households have received laptops in Guyana. They're branded as Guyana property, government of Guyana property. They're given to them free. They have computer classes. And the whole idea is that in total will be 90,000 laptops being distributed. The first 32,000 from last year and this year have been distributed. We haven't reached the interior regions as yet, because in those areas, because there's no connectivity, we have to do hubs and to try to see how to at least run computer programs, but we will not be able in some areas to connect at all until we're able to resolve the other connectivity issues. It is a program that is trying to not only deal with equalizing of access to the digital world, but it's also about opening up people's minds to information, because now we have more websites of the government that you can go on and find out things. And of course for people being able to communicate with one another and to be able to be more knowledgeable what's going on in the world and in Guyana. So that these are some of the things that we're trying to do to open up the country, to modernize the country. And there are many challenges, as I said, we face. We face them as a developing country, like many other developing countries. But also we believe that when we look at Guyana in terms of, Jamaica's having a bailout, we look at some of the problems in some of our neighboring countries, we feel proud that we've been able to hold our head up amongst all these challenges, but we are concerned about the future, and we're concerned that in the political realm, that unless we're able to get a situation where the 3 parties can agree to put Guyana first, and be able to agree that on certain projects, whether you like the government or not, whether you like what goes on or not, that you back the program. Because who knows, some days they may be in government too. And so wouldn't they want the project to be there that they cut the ribbon? I don't know. I don't see it as they do, but I'm on the other side. In Parliament, we have Mr. Trotman. Raphael Trotman is the Speaker, and the Deputy Speaker is Deborah Backer. So it's the first time that the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker are controlled by the opposition. All the political parties, all the parliamentary committees are controlled by the opposition now. They're in majority, and so there are difficulties we face. The danger that is coming at us shortly, by November, is the issue of the anti-money laundering, what is called the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, and the FATF. That we, like all countries, have to be able to show that we can address money laundering and that we have the legislative instruments and the capacity to be able to do that. And all the countries, in the case of the Caribbean Task Force, all the Caribbean countries are going through the same thing as we are, different stages. Antigua is one of the countries that's on the, what they call out of jurisdiction countries, that has not been able to reach the recommendations required. We brought in a money laundering act, a brand new one in 2009. It went before a parliamentary committee. both sides, and it was unanimously passed. In the 2011 assessment by the Caribbean Action Task Force, and in 2012, it was found that a number of our aspects of our bill were deficient, and therefore a number of recommendations were made. As for Trinidad, that had the same problem we had. And so we brought them into Parliament to try to have it passed. It was sent to Parliamentary Committee. Major amendments were made to it, keeping in line with what were the recommendations of the FATF and the CFATF. In August, before the recess, we had completed it. We wanted to bring it in for the deadline of August 26th, which is the deadline for CFATF. And the opposition came to the meeting in the majority and moved that the committee not meet until October. So that killed it. We didn't make the August. We haven't made the May 28th deadline, not the August 26th deadline, and we have November as the next deadline. If Guyana has not been able to meet those deadlines in November, we're going to get into some serious trouble in terms of our financial transactions. And the first people who are going to feel it is some of you who send remittances to Guyana. So if any of you are sending remittances to Guyana through Western Union and stuff, if we get put on the grey and black list, whatever list it is in November, then the first people who are going to feel it are people who are dependent on remittances. And that was the experience that Trinidad had several years ago as well. So again, this is another issue where the discussions with the opposition to try to get them to let us move forward on some of these issues. This is not an issue that we should be fighting over. These are the recommendations, these are the ones we are trying to fulfill, and 80% of the recommendations have to do with amendments to the law. The other 20% have to do with structural and administrative areas like the Financial Intelligence Unit and how the Bank of Guyana is able to monitor the financial transactions in the country. So these are things that we face right now, and I don't want to paint a negative picture because I think that Guyana has moved at a tremendous pace over the years, and that anybody who comes home, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a busy little country, and there's just not enough people there. We need more people. We need more bodies, we need more brains. It's just the pace at which we're going at, and I'll use this as an example. The public works, we have projects with roads and infrastructural work. There are problems in terms of materials, but there are also problems in terms of just having enough companies to be able to do all the work that has to be done. And so a number of the companies are reaching what they call overextending themselves, and so it's having an impact on the completion of projects. And of course, who gets cussed in the whole thing is the government. Who else you can blame? So that we need to encourage investors, we need to encourage companies that come in with experience, we need to encourage Guyanese to come home to help work, or to look at where the projects are advertising, because in many cases the project advertised for personnel. We have a World Bank project at the University of Guyana to do with science and technology and a number of environmental areas. They're right now advertising for consultants. In the project, for example, that's a $16 million US project. We have other projects with roads, bridges, sea defenses, and so again, needing more and more engineers all the time. So you always need engineers. And of course there are other projects to do with the softer areas. As the international financial global crisis in 2008, and really there hasn't been what do you call a rebalancing globally, and we're seeing the impact in the number of European countries and even here, that there's a drying up of funds in the developmental partners and UN. We have projects with UNDP, the UN. They're scrounging, trying to get financing for a number of the country programs which we've agreed and signed up for. The European Union has some projects, but again, these are based on their conditionalities. And so we need to be able to also look for more partners, whether private or new partners in the world, and therefore China, India, Japan, Brazil, Venezuela are key partners in terms of bringing additional resources to us. And so there are many things happening in Guyana that are good, bad, and some are ones that we have to flag and put a red flag near that are concerns that we have to watch out for. But there's also a lot of good happening, and a number of the young people who have studied abroad have been returning home. Part of it is because of the problems overseas in terms of getting jobs in some places. And so we see some of our young people coming home. These are not deportees, by the way. These are, you have the deportees, and you also have the quiet remigrants. These are those who, in the United States, for example, or Canada, who lost their jobs, who lost their pensions, who lost their homes, and who very, very quietly come back home and they set up shop again, and they're not deportees, and they get involved with life at home, and they settle back down. And then you have the young professionals who are graduating, mainly from Canada, a number of them from the United States, but a lot of them are from Canada coming home, some setting up businesses, some working in government, some in the private sector. And that's a healthy development for us. And then of course the Guyanese the numbers leaving the country are less than before. And so you have more itinerant workers, Guyanese going to work in the small islands, in construction industry mainly. They earn their dollars, which are good, and they come back home because they now have a house, a home, their children in school, and the cost of living is cheaper in Guyana than in Barbados or wherever. So, as I said, there are stories you have good, bad, and questionable, and ones you need to flag that are red and are concerned. But in the totality, the country is moving forward, and I think that a number of the developments are good for us. For the future and for the next generation. I've talked a long time, and I'm sure you have many questions and criticisms or comments or things you'd like to add. And for those who are standing up all the time back there,
near to the bar.
there are one or two little seats you can squeeze. Oh, you're near the bar. That's, oh, I never thought about that. Sorry, I never knew, but I didn't even think about that. Paul, what are you doing there then?
How beautiful you are.
Just ignore Paul, Tennessee, please. This is our old, he and I know each other for what, 40 years almost.
CRRS or whatever you have in Canada.
Yeah, we were in the same group abroad in Canada. The Association Concerned Guyanese, 1973, 74. Right? Yeah. And look where he is, and look where I am. Sorry, Paul. Okay, so maybe we can...
You're in a better spot than I am.
Yes.
I just came back from Dubai.
Anyway, I'd like to, if you'd like to say anything, you want to suggest anything, you want to make criticisms or comments or problems?
You mentioned specialty
Can I sit down?
hospitals.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yes. We had an agreement with India on a loan basis for them to build a specialty hospital in Guyana. And so this would provide more specialized services than what we offer right now. Of course, it would be on a kind of cost recovery basis, but subsidized by the government. The hospital was tendered for, and the company was awarded the contract. I don't know all the details of the exact services that would be offered. Part of the agreement, I think, includes Indian doctors coming into work, but as well as Guyanese. But it would be built, you know where Lillian Dal is? Near the university, it would be built near there. But because the funding was not approved by Parliament, we have a bit of a problem.
How are you doing for trained people?
Approximately, well, you know, we're training about 1,000 doctors in Cuba over the last few years, so that, with the Cubans, so that as of now, there are almost 300 doctors have been trained and returned home. They are in different, what do you call, early stages. They're just graduates, so they have to go through their internship In other cases, they finished the internship and they're now registered. But these are young GPs.
See, what I have some concern about, I was there in '97, in 2005,
Yeah.
and I was told that doctors were sending pap smears to Barbados to be read.
Yes, that's true.
Because there was nobody there to do it. And
No.
so, blowing my own trumpet, when I left in 1968, I was the only person trained to examine pap smears. I came to the States, was trained, went back, and at the same time the 80-day strike was on.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Gagan gave me blessings, and Dr. Nihal said, yes, we will. See, she had a good program where, you might not know this, or many people know it, in 1961, Guyana got a prize for the best progress in infant mortality in the British Empire.
Yes, that's right.
And the way it was done when Leshko didn't have the money to build clinics all over the quarantine and West Demerara, she said, okay, well, on Saturdays we'll use the schools. And they sent station wagons with the midwives to do prenatal care, and we were going to use the same pattern to train people to take these smears, bring them back to Georgetown, and have them examined so we'd have early detection of
Yeah, but the
cancer.
smears now are done in Guyana.
Huh?
They're done in Guyana now.
They're done in the Guyana.
Yeah, in those days we didn't have anything. Now we have a little bit more. So the pap smears that are examined in Guyana, and they've also introduced through PAHO a number of new technologies of how to do the testing without having to, it's a name they call now, I can't remember what it is. But
Might be cited.
yeah. So they're doing those now, and the nurses are doing those in primary health care.
I spent a week in Boston doing Cytec when they
Yeah.
first came out.
So we can do those tests now at home, yeah. And you have a number of private hospitals who also offer a broader range of services, so people can choose whether to go to the public sector or the private sector.
I don't want to monopolize this thing,
Yes.
but when in 2005 I was told about this brand new hospital built outside of New Amsterdam. I was so proud to hear about this thing. I asked to go and visit the hospital. And I went through and I was very impressed. And I thanked the nurse who walked me around and said, sir, and I told her, I said, man, and see, please, you're getting like America, you got centralized oxygen. She said, but sir, the thing ain't working. I said, how you mean? She said, well, we had an oxygen leak for nearly 2 months now, and they're not doing anything about it. So as soon as I got to Georgetown, I spoke with Max Hanneman. He was then in Parliament. Max gave me the number to call your chief medical officer. He didn't take the call. He said he'll call me back the following day before I joined the plane. I called him back, and they said, well, why didn't you tell Dr. Mahadio? I said, you know something? If Dr. Mahadio was there and sitting in a hospital with oxygen leaking for a month, if he was in any other country, he would have been kicked out. You know, and I hung up the phone. So if we have that kind of callous behavior, everybody has got to do their little bit, like worker bees, to have the country moving.
I agree.
So,
I mean, I can't answer for something in 2005. Yes,
I know.
go ahead.
so a comment.
Sure.
I've been fortunate enough to travel back to Guyana maybe 9 or 10 times in the last 3 or 4 years. And I enjoyed your presentation because a lot of what you covered, I was seeing, whenever I go out and see that happening. All the good things you mentioned and all the challenges that you mentioned, all the projects that are going on and the challenges to get them completed. I was able to see all of that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to comment that I enjoyed what you were saying because I saw all of that happening.
Yeah.
And you summarized it so well. You must be running the country there to know that. And even the opportunities you mentioned, I also can see that. I would encourage others. And the reason I've been going back so much is because I started a learning center in West Coast Berbice.
Oh, really?
Yes, and the last 3 years We have graduated over 300 students in
Where is
computer
it
classes.
in West Berbice?
Number 28.
Okay, very good.
And we also sponsor students at university. We have 7 students now at university that we are funding from here, as well as other programs. So there's a lot happening, and I'm enjoying that, and I would encourage others to participate. And we thank you and the other leaders for all the good work you're doing.
Thank you, it's kind of you.
Ralph is a little too modest to mention, but that school he's talking about, it's a donation. It's free to the students.
This is skills training, or it's secondary skills training?
Well, there are several programs. The computer program I mentioned was just Microsoft Word, Excel, and Internet training, which allows the students to at least be able to use the computers.
Right.
And several of our folks in the area have been recipients of the One Laptop Per Family program, and are able to now get on board and use them.
Right.
And then the ones at the university, of course, they all have their own laptops. We give them laptops.
Yeah, very good.
And then there is another program where the kids come in. This is the core program that we started, is where they come in the afternoons and receive extra training from the very teachers who teach in the local schools.
Okay, that's good. Thank
They're
you.
engaged part-time in the evening.
That's important in West Coast Berbice because you have a combination of dropouts, mainly boys, and also, and so they can't, and then the problem is that they either have to go to New Amsterdam Technical Institute or Georgetown, and they say it's too far either way. So this gives them a good in-between that they can make up and then move on.
The problem is so severe with the boys that we started a soccer program, football team, just for them, to encourage them to come out. And they can't play unless they're participating in the educational program. But you're right, it's very
Well,
serious.
the problem we're having is, I think it is becoming a global problem, it's certainly a Caribbean problem, is the number of boys dropping out from high school is higher than girls. And girls are doing better at the exams than boys. And so even when you look at the CXC results for Guyana, and the, what do you call it, not the common entrance now, we don't have common entrance anymore, you have grade 6 assessment. And you look at all the pictures of all the kids, it's mostly girls. And so we have to pay special attention to the boys. Any programs like, no, because we want good husbands and fathers. What do you mean? We can't just leave them behind like that. We need our men to be good, and to be strong, and to be educated, and provide for us women. But I'm very glad to hear about your program. One of the problems too, the call centers. One of the other things with the One Laptop and your computer type program was that we have call centers in Guyana. The largest one is Qualphone, Mexican based, and they hire about 2,500 people. They're now building a brand new center where they expect over the next 2 years to be able to hire another 2,000 people. So the expansion, connectivity is critical for the investment in information-based technology and call centers, because it means in places like the interior where you don't have, you have mining, you have a number of agricultural jobs, but they say that the scope of the variety of jobs that are available, you could then do things with call centers in the interior areas, particularly in some of the areas where people speak different languages. Because in the border towns, border villages of Guyana, people speak either Spanish and whatever is the Amerindian language of that area, plus English. And if you're near the Brazil border, you're speaking Portuguese, plus whatever is the Amerindian language, plus English. So you have opportunities in those interior areas for information-based technology in a variety of ways. Yes, Paul.
Gail, central to what you have said is that you have some flagship projects that could give a big impetus to the economy. But they seem to be endangered because of governance, in the sense that what is the role of the opposition and the role of the government in relation to the opposition. Now, energy is key for any country in the world, and from the beginning of civilization. So that project, hydroelectric project, was so important. why is it that you couldn't get the opposition to have a seat at that table at 3 o'clock in the morning to also be able to negotiate? So at least even the other projects, if, you know, they're a normal political problem, because here in the US, they're gridlocked and they have big problems here too, as much as you have there.
Yeah, but Paul, the assumption you have is that it didn't happen. The assumption you have is that it didn't happen.
Okay, so that is what I want you to explain, because in giving a very good presentation, I didn't get a sense, and I've been following that problem, and I also want to ask you, what is this controversy over the chairman of the AFC with that hydroelectric project? Because I was a bit taken aback, because I have a very high opinion of Nigel Hughes, and I was looking at his ascension in the politics of Guyana, and I was becoming very impressed with his forthrightness and all that. And then suddenly, this issue appeared. So there are two things I'm asking you. One is, that project was so important for Guyana, and as a government of Guyana, you're supposed to overlook, you know, the higher ground.
Right.
What you didn't do to get them there, or are they so intransigent that you couldn't get them there, or you didn't give them enough space? What is it?
Well, let you judge that. Let me tell you what we did, and then you'll tell me if we did enough. The project, as you know, the negotiations started in 2008, 2009, 2010. In 2012, the President invited, we were, as you know, prior to the budget of 2012, we had a number of engagements with the opposition to try to see if we could reach agreement on the budget before the budget came, so that we wouldn't have a situation where the budget would be defeated or the budget would be cut. In the midst of that, the issue of the hydro project was discussed, and therefore we invited the opposition parties, Mr. Granger and Mr. Ramjatan. We invited them to bring as many people as they wanted. We would give a presentation on where the project was at that point, including they got details on the costing, estimates, designs, different things like that. That was March 2012. And that was before the budget of 2012. And so we said, look, if you have any questions, because we gave them a whole set of papers, and they said, look, give us 2 weeks. And we said, okay, call us back, tell us if you want to have more information. You want to meet again, you want more, tell us. Nothing happened after that. Nothing. We went into budget, the budget was cut by 19 billion. Part of the money for Myla was in the 2012 budget, which was not cut. So they knew it was in the 2012 budget. Some of the preliminary funds, which the government had to put into a Myla. Near the end of 2012, we then said, look, you know, we will be having to come back to Amila, let's have another discussion and stuff. Again, more presentations, more questions, and that was done. That was around October 2012. March 2012, again before 2013, before this budget, we again raised the Amila Hydrofoil project. They said they need more information. We said, okay. We met between March and June a couple of times, in which in the June meeting, we were able to produce all the agreements, all the costings, everything was given to them in huge binders like this, of everything that we had at that point. Because remember, we're still in negotiations on a number of issues. This project is completed in certain phases, but there are other phases that aren't. In the meantime, AFC was talking about, the IDB, by the way, in the meantime, went and met the political parties. And because they asked, and there was this, the IDB asked us what they should do, and we said, no, go meet them, tell them all about the project. We don't care, go let them know. Have full disclosure. So there were those meetings, and IDB produced certain documents, they got certain documents, and they were told about the environmental assessment, where when they did the environmental impact assessment, apparently they found 2 tiny little fish in the watershed, or whatever you call it, of the falls. Don't ask me what the fish name is, because I don't know. And I don't even know what they look like. So, and I don't think any of us have seen what this fish look like. But anyway, there are two little fish that live in this habitat where and so the requirement now was, on top of all these other negotiations with the finances and purchasing agreement and whatever, was that we have to now create a buffer reserve around the waterfalls that would cater to these two little fish. Because the fish cannot be found anywhere else. They apparently searched for this fish and they couldn't find it anywhere else. So we had to take care of these two little fish. The problem is that...
is it their opposition discovered the
No,
fish?
this was IDB.
Oh, IDB discovered the fish?
Yeah, the IDB environmental consultants.
Oh, okay.
Because you're doing a hydro project, which is always controversial
Yeah, you have
in
to
its
do that.
sense that you're not taking over Amerindian land, you're not somebody's habitat, some species, some flora. Well, understood. Clearly, we have no problem with that. We never expected them to find these two little fish. And so what had to be done is now you have to have this reserve around to protect the two little fish. And so we then had to have a bill to go to Parliament to create this reserve. So we said to the opposition, look, we're coming to Parliament with, one, this bill because of this buffer we need to create, and two, that because we have to be guarantors of the arrangements with the company, and the agreement is with GPL, as a state-owned company, we have to go and amend the debt ceiling for the country in order to guarantor, to stand guarantor. The estimate was that in the 1970s and 80s, the debt ceiling had been raised from what was 20 million to 5 billion, right? And we were going to raise it after 20-something years, almost 30 years, to 130 billion, to cover and the area, to give the companies some security and stuff like that. So we told the opposition, look, this is stage here, all the documents, all the studies, all the agreements, and they all walked out with binders like this amount. And we said a lot of it we explained, but you want the horse's mouth, here's the real thing. You can study it and see what it's like. But we said we have to come with these two issues before recess, because the matter is going to the IDB board, and the IDB board requires certain timelines. We have to get this in by August, da-da-da-da-da. We went to Parliament in June with the two matters. It was deferred. July was deferred by request of the opposition. August the 7th. In the meantime, it went on July 18th to the Parliament and defeated both issues, voted against by the opposition. And as the Chief Whip, I'm saying that I have been in, one, the discussions with the opposition, with the President. I have been on the floor of the House, in between debates and stuff. Trotman, the APNU, and the AFC, trying to get agreement on the thing on July the 18th. They were voted against. They voted against the two issues. So, according to the standing orders of Parliament, that once a matter has been defeated in a session, it can't come back until there's a new session. And we said, what the hell are you guys doing? Because a session means 5 years, the period between elections. And we said, you know, do you guys understand what you've done? If you don't like what the government's doing, nevertheless, there are certain, these are two issues alone. The two issues. If you have specifics, we can deal with them. Anyway, it was defeated on July the 18th. In the meantime, there were discussions between the President and Granger, between the government and the opposition parties. AFC stopped coming to some of the meetings. It was APNU and the government. The AFC then, near the end of July, gave out feelers that they would probably support the motion for the debt ceiling to be raised. And so we were opportunistic. We said, Lord, if we get one of them, better one than nothing. And so we then went back to Parliament and said to Trotman, look, can we waive the standing orders to bring these two issues back into the House so that we can give it one last chance? We have until August to get this, whatever IDB requirements are, from the Board of Directors. can we please do this? And we got assurances through a number of feelers, unofficially and officially, that the AFC was going to support the motion for the debt ceiling. Fine. Went back into Parliament on August the 7th, that's the last day before the recess. Both items we succeeded, with the permission of the Speaker, to bring them back into the House, which has never happened in the history of Guyana before. Got them back onto the floor. The AFC made an amendment, said they would make an amendment to the motion on the debt ceiling. They put the amendment, we agreed to the first amendment, which was that they could come back at a later time, what do you call it, like that this, the issue of the 130 billion could be reviewed in 3 months' time. The debate started. The APNU voted against the bill to do with the reserve, the hydropower reserve for Little Fish. AFC supported, and then we came to the debt ceiling motion. In the midst of that, there are discussions all the time in the Parliament going on with the AFC. APNU isn't talking to us at all. APNU is not supporting, they're not going to support it, nothing. So we are negotiating with the AFC. Throughout that night, in between when we take breaks, suspensions and stuff like that. AFC amends the motion again to cut from 130 billion to 50 billion. And including the clause that allows for to review in 3 months' time. At that stage, we had to make a decision, and we decided that, to put it crudely, half a loaf better than no loaf. Let's go with this. And that's the 50 billion, knowing fully well. We knew fully well at that point that one, we're going to be in trouble with Site Global and Blackstone because this is not giving them the coverage they are supposed to get. And two, we are not going in now with the support, because Site Global and Blackstone both said publicly over and over again, and they went to the parties. We had in between July 18th and August the 7th a consultation which we held with stakeholders on the Mila. Site Global and Blackstone came to Guyana and had their own consultation with the political parties and with national stakeholders between the period of July 19th and August the 5th. Blackstone and them came in and they didn't see the government. They didn't want to see the government inside and us. They wanted to meet the AFC and the APNU to convince them. Out of that came the position of Site Global and Blackstone that unless they have unanimity in the Parliament, the project's over. And we were flabbergasted because we said we've never heard of investors demanding unanimity. In which Parliament? You can't ask for this in this US Congress. You ask for the US Congress, you can get that. How could they put that demand on us? So although on August the 7th, when we finished at 3:30 in the morning on August the 8th, as I said, we took a conscious decision to half a loaf better than no loaf, and let's hope we can swing this with Site Global and Blackstone, although I think with the Minister of Finance and a number of us in our hearts just dropped. Because we figured with Site Global and Blackstone, this is it. It's it. So APNU voted against it. AFC gave us half a loaf, and we knew that we were in trouble. So although the press the next day said, oh, you know, good, AFC supported the government, and then we knew it was over. And all you next had was Site Global say, well, we didn't have it, we're pulling out, Blackstone pull out. And I know for the next week, what was it, that was a Thursday morning we finished. That Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, there was constant discussions. President and Granger, Blackstone, Site Global, all sorts of intermediaries and interlocutors to try to get anybody to move in the whole thing. In fact, the last thing we tried on the morning of August 8th was to say to when we realized we could get outvoted, that can we come back during the recess? Are you guys prepared to meet during the recess? We can go to the Speaker and tell him, look, we're going to meet. Keep meeting until we get this thing through. It wasn't possible. So August the 8th was the definitive moment, was the end of the line. And that's why I said, hydro projects. We then went back and researched all these hydro projects that have had problems, and you start over again. There's another 6-7 years to start over again. And so I can't explain for the AFC and APNU what their position is. If I was in their position and I was in the opposition, I'd make it very clear what my position is. I would say yeah, because I want to be in government one day. If I want to be in government one day and 3 years time is the election, let the project start. I'm going to be the one that's going to cut the ribbon, not the present government. Why would I want to kill a project that if I won't get in government in 3 years' time, I got to start all over again? You got to be joking. I mean, that's my pragmatism. That may not be the view that the opposition looking at. But this was for Guyana. And it's the closest, for those who are old in this room, in 40 years, it's the closest we've ever got to hydro project. The issue of Nigel Hughes, who knows? For me, it's a conflict of interest story, but it came out very late. Nigel Hughes never declared to the public that he was in such a high position with Site Global, although it was in the, what do you call it, the company's register. We knew about it, but we didn't make it public at a certain point. We kept it to be public at a certain point. We're politicians. So we knew it was in the company register. When the company was registered, he was put as a corporation secretary. But he never told the Guyanese people that. And so we're politicians.
So the AFC position vis-a-vis the project was compromised by him working for the international corporation?
No. The AFC, from the beginning, was opposed to the project. The AFC said categorically in the press over and over again.
While he was working for the international
Yeah, he started in
corporation?
2009. We found out about it later, but before it was announced. Cathy Hughes was her company got the consultancy for PR for the FIP Motilal program. FIP Motilal was the big problem to do with hydro in the early days, which AFC attacked, some of it absolutely correct. But how can you be working for a company and at the same time be part of a party that's attacking that company? Either you recluse yourself and say, look boys, I can't be getting up in Parliament and y'all embarrass me. I'm hired by these people, being paid $30 million to do that.
US?
Guyana, man, oh Lord. That's where you living, boy. 30 million Guyana, US dollars? You're talking about the whole World Bank beginning. I mean, the University of Guyana is getting $16 million US from the World Bank. Oh Lord, man, it's loan. You tell him you're 30 million. Now, Cathy Hughes is now was hired as a PR person for the same company as Nigel Hughes.
Wow.
These are conflict of interest situations that should be disclosed. I don't know if the company felt, and I'm maybe out of order in saying this, that they felt by hiring two known opposition politicians that this may help move the thing through for them. I don't know, because I was in 2009 when Nigel was hired. I don't know when Cathy was hired, right? But the problem is, how do you have companies how do you have politicians, Cathy's in Parliament, Nigel's not in Parliament. What caused the problem for the Guyanese people with Nigel was that he asked to, remember he was made chairman of the party, and the belief is that he wants to be the presidential candidate for the next elections. What irritated Guyanese was when the whole thing got exposed about him with Site Global, which is just several weeks ago. He then went to his party and said he wants to withdraw from being chairman of the party. And that is what got people mad. Because they're saying, now you're choosing between money and politics, so now we know where you're
You resigned from the wrong place.
He'd say, yeah, but that's not my problem, that's his problem. You won't make mistakes like that. I'm being very pragmatic. So I mean, you know, this wasn't now PBP saying, this was just ordinary people saying, it's what's wrong with the man. You know, it's way there. He can give up being chairman of the party to hold this thing. So that caused issues within the AFC ranks. And that has for a party that is coming attacking on morality, on corruption, all these things, this whole period where these exposures have not been kind to them, and we're politicians, we all have to deal with the mistakes we make. We all make mistakes, and we have to deal with them. And we face the consequences because the electorate decides which way they're going to deal with you. Ultimately, it's the electorate who will deal with you whether you like it or not. And so, the AFC in Parliament have been effective in doing a number of things, and probably with the Hydro Falls one is the one period where they showed some independence from the APNU, because in most cases they vote with the APNU, or they vote together. And this one seat difference is a kind of illusion, because there are 32 on the PPP side and 33 on the other side. Two parties, 26 and 7. But we always know when there's a problem, because when we propose a date for the next sitting and they don't say anything, we know that they still have all their people in place. But as soon as we put forward a date for a sitting and they get up and amend it, we then, some of the people aren't coming. And they will not, they cannot allow a parliament when they don't have their 33 bodies in place. And two issues came up before August the 7th when they had their bodies in place. You know, all 33, well they had 32 and we had 31. We were missing one person, they were missing one person. And it went to the vote 2 times at night, and twice the people were not in a seat. And so it came out that the matters, you know, I'm chief whip, I got to notice, I count all the time. I got to keep counting, because I got to make sure. So they had 1 seat less. And so in one case the matter was defeated, in the other case it was negativized. And so the 1 seat is critical only if every single person is there. Otherwise a fiction, you know, doesn't work. So this whole thing about being a majority and majority and majority when the 33 bodies are in place. Missing 1, they're equal. Missing 2, they're minority. You know, and this is what goes on all the time. It's always dealing with that reality. How long can Guyana go on in this way? Several things are open to us. One, the opposition can call for a vote of no confidence and you go to the polls.
They could do that at any time?
Yeah, yeah. They can, and as you know, we've gone to the court several times for interpretation of what's going on in Parliament with the budget, with this and that and that. So the High Court is busy all the time interpreting what goes on when we're taking things to Parliament as well. So they can do that, and we can do that too. We can call. We don't have to wait for a no confidence motion. We can also call for elections anytime. If there's a no confidence motion, they have 3 months within elections must be held. That's the Constitution. If we call elections, then we don't have 3 months. We have a longer period. But these are not good things for the country. First of all, in most countries where people have to go to elections within a short period, doesn't show good results. People tired. You don't go back again all over the story. And the Canadians know it well. The Canadians have had minority governments, bam, 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 one after the other. And I think it was 2008, was it? They went within, I think, was a year twice. And the Canadian people said, not a damn. You're all going to do this to us again? Put you all back as minority back again. A second time. So you can't be fickle with these things too. It's a challenge. It's a judgment call, and it's a difficult judgment call. It's not one that should be taken rashly.
But if you say
yes,
you say the economy is doing fine.
Yes, doing well.
And you feel that people see that the economy is doing fine, and you feel very strong from what you say with your convictions, why don't you call for new elections?
It's a judgment call.
Well, I'm saying you feel everything is on your side.
No, I don't think everything is on our side. I don't think that I have said that everything is on our side. I said I think that there are good things and there are things that are challenges. The judgment call for any political party, any of the 3 political parties, is whether 1, they think they can win, 2, whether the Guyanese people are ready for this again. 3, is the election machinery ready? Because GCOM has some changes going on inside of it which won't be ready. And so it's a judgment call. The opposition seems to be moving in the direction of the local government elections, which is fine with us. And the Constitution makes it clear that you can't have local government elections in the same year as national elections. So for us moving to elections, it is not a matter that we haven't considered and that we are not, that we're averse to considering, but not now, not at this moment.
You spoke about the fiber. Where are the fiber connections?
The fiber?
Yes, where are the fiber connections? And you said there's no connectivity at home. I see you disjointing here.
Well, I'm not a technical person. All I know is that the fiber optic cables, there are 2 coming in from Brazil, and the GT&T are brought in from Suriname, and there are 2 others supposed to be coming in from Suriname.
So they have to have positions where they connect?
Yes.
Where are those positions?
In the country?
Yes.
The fiber optic cables have not been, the linkages haven't been laid as yet to connect, because not all of them are in the country yet.
So really we don't have fibers?
I said we are bringing in, I didn't say we had.
I thought you said we had.
No, GT&T has brought in, I said GT&T has brought in 2 cables from Suriname. The government is bringing in 2 cables from Brazil. And there are 2 more that we're going to try to bring in from Suriname. So I didn't say we have connectivity, we don't have. We have to lay the cables and all that stuff has to be done.
On the 3rd issue, what is the...
We don't do with the ones with GT&T, we do with the government ones. Yeah.
On the 3rd issue, what is the government doing about drainage and irrigation?
Constant battle.
Where?
Where, in the city or the country?
In the country, and in the city in particular. And on the east coast also, and on the east bank, on the west bank, on the west coast, so we cover the country. Let me know what the government plans.